And if this is the end, well, I honestly can't think of a more noble way to go.
But there's no such thing as a perfect wrestling retirement. Pomp and circumstance surrounded John Cena's going out match, but his year-long Last Time Is Now tour was blighted by mediocre creative, wasteful matches, and a directionless heel turn. Maybe Sting in AEW came close to perfection, but he still drew criticism for going undefeated, failing to put over a single person over on his way out. Others did achieve perfection until they retconned their farewell bout, as see Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels for proof. But sometimes, however, a wrestler rides into the sunset without even a whimper. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WWE Wrestler careers that ended unceremoniously. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos. Number 10. The Ultimate Warrior. Now, the second biggest star of the WWF's golden era, behind only Hulk Hogan, or ahead of Hulk Hogan depending on your disposition, the Ultimate Warrior technically endured 3 in-ring retirements, each one more embarrassing than the last. He first stepped away from the spotlight in late 1992 in what was described as a semi-retirement. Warrior returned for an odd 1996 stint under Vince McMahon's penmanship, and a subsequent 98 return with WCW that produced some of the worst professional wrestling this side of Heroes of Wrestling. He seemingly surrendered his in-ring duties for good when he and Hogan failed to recreate era-defining magic of WrestleMania 6 and 98's Halloween Havoc. But his actual farewell came a decade after that for a lowly indie outfit in Spain against Orlando Jordan. Somehow going 17 minutes with JBL's former chief of staff, the match, which was contested for New Wrestling Evolution's heavyweight title, was nothing out of the ordinary for the Ultimate Warrior. Rest holds padded the match and he got his big comeback, and 2 flying shoulder tackles later, he tasted his final slice of wrestling gold. It's believed that this comeback was done so that his daughters could watch him wrestle, which may be both touching and torturous, given that he was no condition to compete in 98, let alone 2008. And that was it. That was his last ever match. You can only imagine that the Warrior was paid a substantial amount of money to come out of retirement and wrestle a match in Europe. Warrior would actually leave the belt in the ring and never wrestle again. Number 9. Ken Shamrock. Much like the Ultimate Warrior, Ken Shamrock had taken several leaves of absence from the ring, but his latest appears to be his last. He hasn't wrestled since August 2022, and at 61 years old, he's definitely in no state to add another match to his record. Believe it or not, but his last match was a win over Harry Smith, the son of the British Bulldog, and it was for the Philadelphia-based indie group Battleground Championship Wrestling. But mainstream-wise, the most dangerous man in the world suffered a bizarre disappearance in the wrestling abyss. Shamrock returned to TNA in 2019, enjoyed a handful of feuds against Moose, Sami Callihan, and Eddie Edwards, and then vanished after the company's February 3rd airing of Impact Wrestling. He was in storyline suspended indefinitely after putting his hands on the then TNA commentator D'Lo Brown, and is currently serving his 5th year in TNA Purgatory. In actuality, Shamrock took a step back from pro wrestling after struggling to compete without a live audience, and quietly departed from the Impact Zone. Right now, he's under a Legends deal with WWE and is annually rumored to enter the Royal Rumble match, though Triple H has yet to pull the trigger on a Shamrock surprise. Perhaps with this year's Royal Rumble being in Saudi Arabia, they might pull out a big shock. Number 8. Viscera. Whether he was on a mission as Mabel, gyrating his hips at a disturbed Lillian Garcia as Viscera, or acting as the hired muscle of Matt Striker as Big Daddy V, the real-life Nelson Frazier left an indelible mark in pro wrestling, being regarded as one of the ring's most underrated super heavyweights. He remained active following his second departure from WWE in 2008, touring various North American independents, and found a home away from home in All Japan Pro Wrestling. What transpired as his final in-ring showdown was a throwaway encounter for Qatar Pro Wrestling against Rene Dupree. Frazier was victorious, competing under his Big Daddy V guise before he took a sabbatical to focus on his weight loss. But tragically, a fatal heart attack robbed the one-time King of the Ring of continuing his career 100 pounds lighter. His wife Cassandra left a gut-wrenching comment with TMZ in the wake of her husband's passing. I guess the good Lord wanted him. I wanted him too, but he won. Number 7. Road Warrior Animal. Much like how Bret Hart is a wrestler's wrestler, the Road Warriors were a tag team's tag team. They were freakishly athletic powerhouses whose Doomsday Device finisher was the most protected and the most dangerous of its time. Just ask Bron Breakker. On his own, however, Animal was just a lost cause in wrestling. Tagging with Hawk one last time for a forgotten 2003 Raw match versus Kane and Rob Van Dam, his passing later that year left Animal to forge his own path, which led directly to disastrous Road Warrior spin-offs with Heidenreich and to a less explicit extent Matt Hardy. Yeah, you remember that? He was cut from the company by 2006, had a one-off match at TNA Slammiversary in 2007, made a two-night return to WWE in 2012 as part of Heath Slater's quest to destroy WWE's past. He actually helped open All In 2018 and ended his career as the enforcer to Teddy Long for the Texas-based SWE Fury. He would pass away in September 2020 after suffering a heart attack before the thought of an official farewell had entered his mind. It was an unfortunate conclusion to an otherwise legendary wrestling career. Number 6. Kane. And although the focus has now shifted to prioritizing surprise entrants from NXT, the Royal Rumble match has historically featured legends from the past making surprise comebacks to typically rapturous ovations. With Edge in 2020, Mr. Perfect in 2002, Diesel in 2011, and Rey Mysterio in 2018 amongst those who have received the warmest welcome back. It's rare, however, for the Royal Rumble match to mark a wrestler's final in-ring outing, unless you're Kane. The Big Red Machine hung up his mask for good after entering the 2021 Rumble, where he lasted shy of 2 minutes before being dumped out by Damian Priest. He's made the odd appearance since, including being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2021, but the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee has refrained from reprising his iconic role in an in-ring environment. It's unlikely to change either, as Kane explained on Busted Open Radio that a retirement match is likely behind him. I don't know about that, man. Oh man, brother, we're just talking about athleticism and movement and keeping up with the pace of people nowadays. That may have left me behind, guys. Number 5. Tito Santana. Widely regarded as a golden era gem, Tito Santana was almost something of a pro wrestling journeyman, working everywhere from the heavy heights of the WWF and WCW down to the lowly independent companies that padded out his later years. But it was under Vince McMahon that El Matador delivered his most stellar work. He was a two-time Intercontinental Champion, a two-time Tag Team Champion, and the 1989 King of the Ring. He also helped bridge the gap between the Golden and New Generation eras. It can be reasonably justified that Tito devoted his life to McMahon, so why did his tenure end with him doing an untelevised job for the Bastion Booger and Damien Demento? Okay, let's face it, though he was never a headline attraction, unless the show was in Spain against The Undertaker, it was embarrassing that Santana was allowed to leave without so much as a final televised match, especially given that Raw had premiered by the time of his exit. Modernly, it would have been the equivalent of The Miz leaving after being jobbed out to Joe Hendry on a live event loop. It would, well, probably never happen today, and it should have never happened then. Luckily for Tito, he had another 3 decades of work ahead of him outside of Vince McMahon's fledgling empire, which included a stint as one of ECW's earliest heavyweight champions. Believe it or not, Tito was still wrestling in 2019 at the Legends of Wrestling Detroit show. Obviously, that wouldn't have been a fitting farewell either. Number 4. Andre the Giant. I was sad to witness the declining health of Andre the Giant, who sadly passed away from congestive heart failure in January 1993. Figuratively and literally the biggest draw in wrestling throughout the 80s, Andre could barely walk by the dawn of the decade and required the use of a cane during his final televised appearance on American soil. That occurred actually not for the WWF, but rather WCW. He emerged on the 20th Clash of the Champions special in September 92, souring the close relationship he had with Vince McMahon that remained strained until Andre's eventual passing. Bruce Pritchard later stated that McMahon admitted to regretting the fallout not being resolved before the world lost the 8th wonder of the world.
Vince took it hard. Vince and Andre were the same age and had birthdays that were fairly close together. And Vince considered Andre one of his best friends and really hated the falling out that they had. So I think there was a little bit of regret that hadn't been completely rectified and that he didn't have the opportunity to say goodbye to his friend.
His last match was a disturbing watch. Teaming with Giant Baba and Russia Chimera, Andre toppled Masanobu Fuchi, Motoshi Akuma, and Haruka Eigen for All Japan Pro Wrestling in an 11-minute match that he visibly struggled to get through. Number 3. Roddy Piper. Now you can argue that Roddy Piper never retired, he just stopped wrestling. The Hot Rod continued making irregular appearances for WWE until his July 2015 passing, including being a resident on Legends House and hosting various Piper Pit segments with Rusev, Chris Jericho, and The Shield amongst his final guests, but he hadn't wrestled past 2011, delivering 4 matches that ranged in quality. He won an oddball Legends Battle Royal for PWG that January that resulted in Jimmy Hart, Vampiro, and Chavo Classic bizarrely becoming PWG alumni, and followed it with 2 below-average matches for WWE. He and pro skateboarder Rob Dyrdek defeated Tyson Kidd and Zack Ryder during WrestleMania 27 Access before 2 months later he pinned The Miz in his final WWE outing. His actual final outing was a tag team match for Juggalo Championship Wrestling where the combined age was 230 years old. There he and Cowboy Bob Orton defeated Mick Foley and Terry Funk. Number 2. Chyna. Chyna only wrestled 112 matches, but she managed to break down every barrier along the way throughout her impressively brief career and achieved numerous male-orientated feats in WWF, with her acclaimed Royal Rumble participation in 1999 and 2000 ultimately paving the way for an all-women's offshoot in 2018. Despite her successes, however, Chyna departed the WWF on acrimonious terms. The breakdown of a relationship with Triple H and the potentiality of having his affair with Stephanie McMahon and the lack of equal pay were reportedly driving factors in her dismissal, with a real-life Joanie Laurer remaining on WWE's Do Not Mention list until her 2016 passing. Her run would end in 2001 and a subsequent 13-match stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling that didn't last past 2002, but the Ninth Wonder of the World didn't fully retire until 2011. That year, she made a legitimately shocking debut for TNA as Kurt Angle's mystery associate. Together with her old Attitude Era colleague, Chyna defeated Jeff and Karen Jarrett in a bittersweet final match. And number 1, Randy Savage. For a wrestler who built a career upon match quality, Randy Savage certainly didn't care for what he produced when he landed in TNA. Finally debuting at 2004's Victory Road, the Macho Man was paired with Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles against the Kings of Wrestling Jeff Jarrett, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall for the following month's Turning Point. It was an all-star lineup until it wasn't, as Savage didn't emerge until the final few minutes, decked out all in black where he hit a couple of punches for the cheap win. There was no flying elbow drop, no colourful ring attire, and no Macho Man mannerisms. He wrestled as if he was a Randy Savage impersonator. Now the story behind Randy coming into TNA is even more wild than the match. His Victory Road debut came after months of speculation and outright teases, and even when he finally did show up, he did so with a list of demands longer than Chris Jericho's list of 1,004 holds. Furthermore, he walked out of 2 sets of Impact tapings, the latter being the last straw for TNA executives, and any further plans for Savage in TNA were canned. Perhaps if this didn't happen, Randy Savage could have had a great farewell to wrestling. Well, it was still better than his final match, that being that weird 41-man Battle Royal on WCW Thunder. But there you have it, folks, 10 WWE Wrestler careers that ended unceremoniously. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.